see how many people come on.
Well, we will give people a chance to flood in. My name's Dan Vlamis. I'm kind of welcome people here. And for those that are here for our favorite features of OAC, we will begin momentarily as soon as we see some people flood in and get the participants online. Let's see, I will take the time now to, at least as people are joining, welcome our co-presenters. My name is Dan Vlamis with Huron Consulting Group. We've got also Philippe Lyon, and we'll just make sure microphones work. Say hello, Philippe.
Hello, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. We've also got Tim Vlamis from Huron Consulting Group. Tim.
Hey, Dan, I'm here.
Okay. And Wayne Van Sluys from Argano. You there, Wayne?
Hello, and welcome everybody.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to, we do these every 2 months as part of the Analytics and Data Oracle User Group. And we will be talking about our favorite features of OAC, especially focusing on the features that rolled out in the March 2024 release. We'll have some introductory remarks that I'll go through, and then we will get on with the information and show some live demos of several things. I think you'll find this pretty interesting. I'll also mention, if you have specific questions, we'd like you to use the Q&A widget down at the bottom of your screen. You can also in the chat say hello. We are a user community, so we'd love for you to say hello, where you're from in the chat message. But please, if you would, put your questions in Q&A, and allows us to mark those. I'll also mention, if you have specific questions for Philippe, our mystery guest participant from the Oracle Analytics Product Management Group, he's on for the first part of this, so get those questions in at the beginning of the presentation if they're addressed to Philippe. Otherwise, yeah, we'll do our best to answer any of the questions that come up amongst Tim, Wayne, and myself. We'll do also include some helpful links. We'll put these in the chat with links to the Oracle Analytics videos. We highlight this every time. This is how we often learn what the new features are on YouTube. The Oracle Analytics Product Management Group puts out their videos on what's new, and they're usually 1 to 5 minute videos on many of the new features. There's also a direct link to that in bit.ly/OACMAR24 features. There's also some documentation on all of this at that big long URL we'll put in chat. That does not change each release. Release hasn't in the past few releases. Also recommend you join the community at oracle.com, community.oracle.com on Oracle Analytics. You can also post your enhancement requests for the product in there as well. There's some examples in there and some live demos where you can run the software yourself. Even without an OAC license, you can run visualizations that have been built by others. So all those, check those out. There's some links that are there for you. This is in a series of TechCasts that we give going back to 2019. We have multiple years worth of these. These are just some of the stuff that's out there at andouc.org/techcasts. We also encourage you to submit your own topics. We would love for you to show off what you're doing, at your company, and share some tip that you've come up with. Develop a TechCast. These generally run from half an hour to 45 minutes or so. Sometimes we go up to an hour. And we do these generally on Thursdays, and we are looking for other people to present starting in June. So check out our website. We have some new topics that are going to be posted shortly on this. We also have merch. If you go and support us, you can visit the AnDOU store at andouc.org and help us out. I mentioned we're part of a community, so join us. We have a Slack workspace that you can join. There's also a website at andouc.org, the YouTube channel that I already mentioned, and other places you can see us as well. We're going to be going over these features today. We're going to go Philippe, then Tim, then Wayne, then me, talk about several of these things. Philippe will talk about assess machine learning models using quality metrics, persist auto insights, column selections, and insight types. These are things that are new in March. And wow, we even talked Philippe into previewing something that's coming out in May. So I'm kind of anxious to see what he comes up with that. Tim will talk about native time series functions. Yay, finally in data sets, you don't have to build the semantic model. Parameterized reference lines and bottom and top relative time filters. Wayne's going to spend his time talking about map stuff. Happens to be a passion, I think, of Wayne's. And I'll talk about the new conditional decorations with icons and emojis. And some extra preview features you may not see if you don't read the documentation. So with that, I'm going to pass things over to Philippe and take it away, Philippe.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks again for having me. Can you hear me fine?
Yep, can hear you great.
Thanks, and thanks everyone for joining this call. So I'm going to share my screen first. That'll stop your sharing. Then give me 1 second, make sure I select the right screen. Can you see my OAC screen?
We are seeing your OAC screen that has favorites in it.
Great, thanks. So, hey, I want to talk for a few minutes about, so first of all, I'm Philippe and I'm part of Oracle Analytics development team. Some of you I know, and I want to talk the next 10 minutes about some little enhancements that happen in the March release that there are targeted at making some existing process easier. But there is not a massive feature I'm going to talk about here, but little things. And more massive features coming in the presenters after me and also in the next drop. Meanwhile, there is one simple thing. If you're a machine learning or a citizen data scientist and you're familiar with using AutoML, for instance, or OML, Oracle Machine Learning in OAC, you, just as a reminder, you invoke these functions by going into data flow. So I'm going to show you a data flow that is doing this. So here's one, for instance. I'm going to open this one. Why don't I just open it? I have a data set in an Oracle database, and I have an AutoML. I already selected it. That's why it's not available. AutoML node, and AutoML is simply saying, what do you want to predict? And that's it, basically. I want to predict attrition in my employee data set. Just give a name to the model, and this will invoke AutoML behind the scenes, and it will generate the best model. And there's a rich process, a very robust process happening in OML, Oracle Machine Learning, behind the scenes, outside of Oracle Analytics. That's the whole purpose. And as a result, we get a model. Now, why am I showing all of this to you? Because in March, we have enhanced the output of that model so you can get information. So basically, let me show you an output of a model that was there early March, which was before the upgrade of that machine, that box that I'm using. And the output was just telling me a few information about the model, well, where it came from, who can have access to it, and also what it is. So the AutoML process found or scored the classification as the best model. Oh, no, sorry, a naive Bayes as the best algorithm. And of course, I was asking for some classification, and it gives me information about parameters and input and output. And then it gave me also pointers to some views in the database for having more information. That's it. That was before. The new capability in March, not a capability, but enhancement is, as you see, that same AutoML model has more tabs. And in particular, it has one that is a quality tab, which is telling me as an analyst, the model that OML generated for you has this quality output. And in this case, it's a classification. So here is the confusion matrix. And that gives you some understanding of how good that model is. We know it is the best one because it's been built by AutoML, but how good is it given all the data that we input? And I may like it or I may not like it and go back to my data flow, maybe enrich more data into it and ask for the process to recompute. So that information is new here in March, and soon enough, you will also, we also have more changes here, such as, we still see the views that hold more information, but we also have a direct access to some data about the model. And if I click on this, you can see in the background, this is opening automatically a data set where I can basically build all of my my quality as a report, not just looking at it from the inspect. That is an enhancement that came into March, and the objective of that enhancement is that if you're using O2ML, it gives you a little bit more of comfort with leveraging that content. Another quick enhancement that came in March, so I'll completely go out of O2ML now, or in machine learning, is something about Auto Insights. We are in the process. Okay, let me type and then I'll speak. We are in the process of enhancing Auto Insights so that it becomes more contextual and also more personalized to the user. So I'm going to open a data set where I have some insights that the system has discovered. And as you know, this is looking at a number of columns, and this number of columns is if you could read it here in the tooltip, but in this case, it's sales, gross unit price, and some product category, CT, and customer segment, and order priority are the dimensions that this is looking at. Okay, this is nice, this is cool, but this is what the system guessed. And I happen to be a user that is interested with other columns, so I can click on my settings here for Auto Insights, and first of all, I could override some of the visualizations that I want to see. I'm not interested in trending, for instance, nothing to do with time. And I deactivated them, and I'm only interested with some type of visualizations, just making it up. But most importantly, I'm not interested in gross unit price. I'm interested in discount and shipping cost and sales. So I'm customizing the scope. I'm not interested in any row count in this data set, and I'm interested in maybe some set of columns, maybe not customer segment, but product container, ship mode, and I may not care about product category, and on and like this. As I apply this information, of course, the system will recompute a new set of insights. Hopefully it'll come up soon enough. But most importantly, that tasks that I just did could have taken me some time. So it is now going to persist for me and this data set. So anytime I come back and open this data set, the selection that I've done now persists, and I don't have to redo it. So of course, I see a new set of visas, but let's say I go out of this and I just log off, and this data set now holds my customization for Auto Insights. So it's going to always return my selection by default until I modify it again or until I reset to default. That is a efficiency enhancer for me not to have to reselect this every time I get off and on, log in, log off of a data set. And I'll take another minute to also give you a quick sneak on a feature coming up in May. So May is actually next week. So there are quite a few features coming up in May. We will have a call about this in a few weeks, I'm sure, with Dan and the team. But in the meantime, here is one simple thing that is happening in May. This is my sample order line data set. And if I go into the definition of it, this is a file-based data set. This is a file-based data set. It's based on that Excel or CSV file, or it could be a model, but you can see that I now have a filter tab here. And I could set, as I define my data set, I could set filters to say, this data set in Oracle Analytics consumes this file, physical file, but as a dataset owner, I just want to filter it to only this intersection. And obviously I can add, just like you're familiar with the filter paradigm in OAC, all I have to do is save this, okay it, and anybody using this data set will now be restricted with this filtering. So this is a classic filter syntax, that you're probably familiar with in OAC. Up until May, it was possible on database data sets, but now in May, so in a few weeks from now, you'll have the ability to compose the filters as part of file-based data sets. There's a lot more coming up in May, quite exciting stuff as well, but I'll wait for a few weeks until this is shipped, and the playlist should come pretty soon. That's pretty much all I had, Dan. I think I'll pass it on to Tim. Is that right?
Yep. Tim,
Thanks, Tim.
you're up.
I can't start my video because Carrie stopped it. So,
Okay. Need to turn it back on, Carrie. There you go.
all right. Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and share screen 2. Share.
And while you're getting going, Tim, I'll just mention for people, if you have questions, put them in. I already answered one. And Philippe, there's one on the bursting capability. Feel free to override my answer that I put in there. But otherwise, other people that have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Go ahead, Tim.
All right. Thanks. So what I'm going to talk today about is the year ago function in DV. So what we have here is we have a data set, and I wanted to show both a subject area and a data set. So I have 2 of them joined, but we're looking at just the data set here. And previously we would have to, use filters and whatnot and have the date set to multiple years if we wanted to show them in side by side. So what we have here is a selection where I've chosen to evaluate or look at, sales in 2022. And what I want to do in this graph is present what the sales were a year ago for comparison purposes, for a little bit of context for how we evaluate our sales. And this is a graph type that we see over and over again in all different kinds of systems. And what we're asking the viewer to do, the user to do, is really to evaluate the 2 different bars next to one another. And I will show you this calculation. It is very simple. This has been in OBIEE for a very long time, and we now have it in DV. But what this is under time series calculations ago. And what we're looking at is if I give it the measure I'm using and the grain at which we're going to, or the time level, if you will, that we're going to evaluate this expression at, then I'm choosing year. So this will programmatically give me 1 year ago for this particular measure. And so then we can graph them together. We just put sales year ago and sales next to one another. So you can see I chose the darker color for the current year for sales. That's really what we want to look at. But the one thing I've done in this canvas, and I want to point out, is that we did a difference graph. And so asking a user to see the white space between the adjacent bars is a big ask when we actually test it in data visualization, research and whatnot. So here in this graph, all I did was created another calculation, which is taking my sales minus, and I just dragged this year ago definition in, and that way we get the difference of the 2, and we graph it discretely. Now I can see at a glance which bar is higher than the other bar, and I get a sense of the relative size of those bars in the other graph. So I would say whatever you present these side-by-side graphs, side-by-side bars in a graph, ask yourself, do I need a difference graph to go with it? The other graph type we chose to do was a waterfall graph, so that we can see at a glance the ongoing value. So in other words, the cumulative value of these sales differences in terms of what the total is across the entire time period. So here we can see, the ending value is minus 92, and that total bar length is minus $122,000. So again, showing the same data a couple different ways can really help users understand. And again, all I did was use this same sales year ago difference measure, but in a different graph type, a waterfall versus a bar graph.
And I get to interrupt Tim because I'm his brother.
Yeah.
The ability to do the goes is something we've wanted to do with data sets for quite some time. So now I'm thrilled to have the ability to do that in data sets in addition to semantic models.
Yeah, so building out the formulas took 2 seconds now.
Yeah.
Whereas before I would have had to do filters and, think about it, and or maybe parameters, and, really conscious, be aware of what I'm trying to build, how I'm trying to build it, syntax and whatnot, make choices. And now it's right there, and it takes so much less time, and I can focus on what am I trying to show in the data, right? And that's always what we're trying to do, is share the insights. This data set is using a subject area. And so this year ago sales difference, again, we're using year ago, but I wanted to point out that we're using actually the time hierarchy column. So when we look at this subject area, we can see that we have a time hierarchy here, and I'm actually expanding this hierarchy and choosing to use the year column from the hierarchy within the ago calculation. Okay, so that's the key to using it in a subject area in DV. So now what we can do is, obviously within a pivot table, we can expand and collapse. And so we get an interactive capability of seeing what was happening with that, with our revenue, with our year ago revenue, and then with the difference. Now, what we know from, again, kind of human cognition research, people are pretty terrible at reading tables. So what we want to do is we actually want to, do this visually so they get an indication. What I thought I'd show here is just a little bit of how we would do that in a graph. And I'm actually putting the quarters in for the different, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Let me undo. I meant to click the quarter, not the month. The month expands directly to a day. But here we can see, now I can compare these quarters, then I can get the additional drillable capability of looking at what were the components within this particular quarter. But so this becomes an expandable bar graph, if you will. Lots of other ways to do this. We can do stacks for context. We can do other things, but I thought this is an interesting technique to share. Again, the same difference type of graphs and waterfall graphs share the insights. To date is a different calculation. So this is, instead of using a waterfall or something else, this is actually calculating the ongoing cumulative value across a period of time. So let me show this calculation. Revenue year to date. And so within time series, what we have now, we have ago, period, rolling, and to date. Period is rolling if we want to look at the most recent 3 months, for example, or a 3 month period roll on a rolling basis and have that be dynamic, we can use that. This to date function is really looking at, again, for a particular measure across a period of time. And so this time interval period of time, we can specify it the year, quarter, month, week, whatever. And so that accumulates the values as they occur in the system. So here, again, we're doing side-by-side bars to show what's the revenue, what's the target revenue, how much do we think? Sometimes target's higher than actual, sometimes actual is higher than target. And what we want to do is on any particular month, where were we on a total basis, adding up all these individual bars. Visually, very difficult to do. Once we accumulate them in a to-date function, relatively easy to see that we're staying ahead of our forecast for the entire year, or even with it. Also wanted to share some parameterization of, top bottom. So I am out of time. Wayne or Dan, can I go over 2 minutes?
Yeah, you can go over. We have a little bit of slack time built into the schedule, Tim.
Okay, sorry everyone.
No, you're good.
So what we're doing here is we're saying really we have a lot of data and we want to look at the top 10. And in this case, we're looking at the combination of customer segment and order priority. So we're saying of those multiple selections, which are the 10 biggest ones? And that way we can adjust this. So if we wanted to say, oh, I just want to see, the top 8, we can look at that, and we're going to take out the 2 shortest bars. So what we're doing here, let me just share this. We're actually building a parameter for the, I go to parameters here. This is sales top bottom method. So this is just a simple selection between top and bottom so that we can choose, I want to look at the top or I want to look at the bottom 8. Now, notice one of the other things we did visually is we actually changed the color in our graph, which is a good idea. Notice the scale of the bottom is $0 to $40. If we put that on the top, it's going to be much different, 0 to 120,000. So one of the little tricks that when you're switching between top bottom you want to do is actually make the color dependent on which one you're showing, so that we give a visual indication that, hey, this is a major change in the graph. All right. And then we included just a heat map to kind of indicate, what the what the overall is, so that when we pick a particular one, we can see it within the context of the overall. The other parameter here is this count parameter. And so this is just a data type integer on a range, and we set the range. So we're saying that the user can choose a number between 1 and 25, and then we're setting it with an initial value. Okay, I think that is the major thing that I wanted to share in this one. And then reference lines, we've been asking for this, and we've been doing some creative hacks for a long time. Just know that we now have the capability of setting an indicator line for a date or for a particular attribute value or range. So this function is using this, ship date filter. So if we say, the analytics reference line, what we're doing here is we're actually calling this this parameter that we've set to 6.1, and that is appearing here, so that we can actually choose the ship date we want to use for our particular visualization, calling attention to it within the bar, within this rather, busy, how much shipped on a daily basis. We want people to pay attention to this initial date and range. And so we have 2 different, we have a date one and we have a range one. So starting on 6.1 to 6:30. All right, Dan, that's really what I wanted to share. And thanks everyone.
Yeah, and make one more point on the parameters piece. This, by using parameters in some of these, it allows us to highlight stuff between different canvases. Go back one canvas, if you would, Tim, on the top bottom parameters.
Yeah.
The big change is before you could always specify, I want to be able to have 8, the top 8 or the top 10. What we
Yes.
now can do is, in effect, save that away as a parameter and then pass that between dashboards. It's a setting. It becomes a variable in the system that we can control and save away. This is one of the things that stopped some of the dashboard creation process, because we had this with variables. We now have the similar functionality with parameters, and parameters get beefed up every single release. So
Yeah, and you may want to have a difference between your top. I want to show the top 15, but I want to show the bottom, 10. And before, this would have been pretty involved to code this, right? And so now this makes it for the casual dashboard user, if you will, give them the ability to control what they're looking at on a much, much finer basis. Okay? All right, I'll stop there.
Wayne, over to you.
All right. Can someone turn my camera on?
Try.
There we go. All right. So as Dan says, I like maps. I've been doing stuff with maps for years, and I'm going to share my screen and bring this over to the center so you all don't have me looking to the left while I'm trying to do my share. Share screen. Bing. There. All right. So in the world of maps, and you're looking at the web page for the What's New, right?
Right.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure I had the right screen.
Yep.
So the video is great. If you all want to take a look at that, the young lady did a very good job illustrating how this works. In terms of the What's New, we have the ability now to do select shapes on a map for a single layer. So instead of multiple layers. And where did my go this? Okay. So here's my map. And get this out of the way. So I have a map layer, and actually 2 layers. We have the regions sales, and then I have my layer of customers and units. So there's 2 different map layers. Customers are by their longitude, latitude, and my units sold. So, but I want to come in here and try to use this to drive the filter, maybe my tile over here. And if I do that, what's happening is it's selecting not only the units people that I wanted, but it's also picking up that background layer. And I really only want to control my tile over here by the units pieces. So first I'm going to set this to use this filter. And you can see when I do this, oops, again, it's going to pick up those four regions. So to change that, I'm going to go to my canvas properties and into the map layer. And we have the map layer here, and to the region name, because that's what's setting up these 6 regions, I'm going to take this enable selection and I'm going to turn it off. What's going on here?
I don't know, Wayne.
The gremlins just came in and beat me.
Yeah. That's what you get for live demos, huh?
Oh, jeepers.
I saw it worked before.
Yeah, I actually had it working before I joined the call. So,
well, I can imagine then once you do that, when you select it selects just the dots, right?
Yeah. So we just buggered this one up. Something happened to my data sets.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I get an A for effort.
Yeah, right. Sometimes
Oh,
that happens.
These are file-based data sets. I don't know what's going on with my
Yeah,
DV.
yeah. Okay, well, is there anything else you can show? Yeah, just go back in.
Let's try it again.
One of the things I'll point out to people, this happens to us when we're developing stuff, when they have different things at different grains, while Wayne gets this reset. This is one of the advantages in the DV interface. You can undo things. If you don't save the workbook, you can come back and undo the change that you just made. Or maybe it's something in your environment, Wayne.
Oh, wait a minute here. I turned off my autonomous data warehouse. That's what I did. Hold on for a minute.
Oh, you turned off the database. That's a nasty thing to do to OAC.
Like, wait a minute here. I thought this was a file-based load. It's not. It's actually database driven. Oh man, Dan Sluys, you
Well,
just totally.
Tell you what, let's do this on the fly. Why don't I talk about the things I was going to talk about, and we'll come back to you, Wayne.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
Give you a chance to get the database back on.
Like, I don't need that on. All right.
All right, Wayne, I'm going to take over and give you a chance to recover. Okay. Let me share my screen. And we will just adjust on the fly. All right, so what I wanted to talk about was a couple things on conditional decorations that are available now. And so one of the things that I did was I got this copy of a dashboard that Oracle had nicely created. And this is in the partner instance that they make available. And I wanted to point out a couple things that now we have. We have the ability to put decorations on performance tiles, and these can be conditional. So this is actually very nice in that it shows how these things are done, and you can go and play with this workbook and stuff. But I'm going to focus on this pivot table and show you some of the capabilities. And one of the things we can do, this has been in the product for a while, but I can zoom in. Sometimes in presentations, I find stuff that others say, well, that's been in there a long time, and I didn't even realize it. So I try and point some of these things out. But now if you notice in here, we've got all these numbers for sales and profit value for 3 different areas. And that's on this prompt value. The different cities, we can filter by city, we can filter by subcategory. And if I select this viz, I can see that the individual columns are different shipping modes. So delivery, truck, and so forth. Now, one of the things that happens with this, and we can also put a decoration on the performance tile section of the pivot table. So if you missed it, this came out several months ago. Now, individual vizzes, most of them have, maybe all of them, have a tile section of the viz that you can turn on. So it eliminates the necessity to create a separate performance tile to show the sales and quantity ordered next to it. But anyway, I'm going to expand on that and show you how this is done. Now, if I come in and look at the decorations and I expand this and look at the little stoplight, you can manage conditional formatting rules. Now, for those that were waiting for all this to come out, this is actually very powerful. The conditional formatting area warrants spending a little bit of time on it. We have multiple conditions that have been set for this. Sales, product category, tile, sales greater than 8 gets this little trendy thing that appears, this little icon. And these are the different conditional decorations. You can do it with colors, font, icon, note, and legend. This icon is what's there, and that can be based on a condition. So now, whether sales is greater than 8, this is going to appear on the tile area. Notice we have conditional formatting that are good for individual visualizations. We also have control the conditional formatting that's true at the workbook level. So we have both of those in here, and that's how the little fire thing appears for there. So play around with it, read the documentation. There's a lot in here. But one of the things I want to point out is as well in here, if I look at this rule 2, where we can see, and I adjusted the numbers in mine. Let me go and show. You can see these are hard coded to 500,000, less than or equal to 500,000, and so forth. And as a result, in the demo, all we get is red and yellow. If I come over to the one that I modified. I adjusted this a little bit for demo purposes, and this is what I suggest. Figure out when you're demonstrating this stuff, don't have everything have a decoration. When everything has a decoration, it's just too much. So I altered mine to, in this demo, to change the values so that now this only appears for, in this rule 2, 100,000, less than 100,000, greater than 500,000, or greater than 750,000, and so forth, and turn on that rule. The other thing that happens with these is these little thumbs down when I look at those. All right, let's see, I can move that guy over so you can see both at once. If you turn on enable rule blending, it makes it so that when these things are running, it won't stop and allows multiple conditions to take place. Read the documentation on it, makes sense, and then you can have things for multiple rules. The other thing I did was, notice these are all hard-coded. Unfortunately, and I want you to think about this when you're designing dashboards, when you have a filter that's going to take place, if I filter this to just bookcases or filter this to an individual cities, these hard-coded values are not going to make as much sense for providing this type of rule. So if I come in and look at that guy and look at the values, I changed the profit value to instead be profit value less than a hard-coded value. I made it 10% of sales. And what I did to do that was when you select a value here, you can either hard code a value or you can select any column that's in your subject area or in your data set. Or you can come down here and specify a calculation. And all I did was I created a calculation called 10% of sales. And that could have been something more complicated based on the level of the person or another value in the organization, and created that. And that's how I changed it. So think about having rules be that way. Also notice as I hover over here, there's the ability to put percentages directly in here instead of having to go through and create your own measure. So that's what I did to do that. I came down here, right-clicked on my calculation, create a calculation, and here is the simple value I had for sales times 0.1 and called it 10% of sales. As a result, when this appears down here, this little trending down icon appears for profit value less than 10% of sales. And so the key is legend is automatically added to the viz when you use these conditional formatting. And you can see these two end up being less than 10% of sales. And as I change my prompt values, this is going to make more sense. Whereas hard-coded values, of course, are going to be much less. And that's where I think in many ways, the conditional formatting is easier to apply to a ratio type measure rather than a raw numeric value, because then you have to think about how are we going to conditionally format this? What is good or bad when you're going to, look at different divisions, that type of thing, or different delivery methods. So think about that when you're designing vizzes, especially using conditional formats, whether these things, if you will, auto scale, the measure is normalized. As well in here, if you didn't see it, another nice thing is the ability for these rules. There's a copy or duplicate button. So you can take individual rules, duplicate them, you can delete them, you can change all these conditional decorations. There's a whole library of them. If you take a look at the icons, all sorts of icons, emojis, and standard type icons that you can take a look at. All right. Let's see. You can also turn on the titles. Oh, one of the tip I want to point out while I'm at this, notice that this last 10 years orders date, I had to turn on that. It came to me with this turned off. As a result, when you're looking at the visualizations, notice that you can select in conditional formatting which viz you're able to apply to. And so you need to be able to see what's the name of the viz in order to use that. That's one thing I wanted to show on conditional decorations and such. One last thing I'll get on real quick and then give things back to Wayne is the ability to new things that are coming out. If you look at that what's new page in here, what's new in March 2024, come down here, there's some new things. The ability to enable or disable workbook personalization. It's control whether users can personalize workbooks using a system setting. That's new in there. So enable personalization in workbooks. I don't have a demo of that, but take a look at that. That's very cool. And for those that have been waiting, including us, on workbook email scheduler, this is in preview. This stuff you don't get to see unless you go look at the notes and know to turn it on. So share visualizations using workbook email scheduler, that's in preview. You have to turn it on and then you can look at it. That appears in the control panel under system settings. You come in here in console system settings, and if you want to play with this stuff, come in here to preview. And what I do when I get a new release, I turn this stuff on our dev instance so I can play with it. Preview workbook email scheduling bursting and preview email scheduler. You want to turn those off. And those will eventually be fully supported and everything. They're just giving you a preview of it. One last thing I will point out that I noticed in here that it kind of slipped in. Direct migration from OBIEE 11G is being desupported. So you need to move first to OAS for doing that. So that's kind of interesting, direct migration on here. I haven't looked into exactly what that means, but I noticed that slipped in. Take a look at the documentation. It has some good stuff in here when you're looking at these. With that, I will turn things over to Wayne.
Okay, well, my gremlins are gone.
Good.
Start my video, there we go. And sharing my desktop. Okie dokie. So back to where we're starting from scratch again. Totally didn't think about shutting that. Why I thought this visualization was file based. I forgot that I had done it in database. So we have the regions of Missouri, and we have units by customers. And as I was trying to show you, if I try to do a select, it's going to select all the regions. And I don't want that. I want just to be able to look at my data here, this as a filter. So I'm going to drive that number over here from what I select over here, but I only want to be selecting the customers, not the regions. And so if we go to the Viz properties into the map layer, and we come down here, we take this off. Now, when I do my select, I'm only getting those customers that I selected. And this is really handy when you're having multiple layers on your map to kind of help tell the story, because I wanted to look at my customers in regions and look at how much my region was selling and things like that. So this is my demo, some of my visualizations for my Kscope presentation last year. So the next piece is that I'd like to show the labels on my regions here. So we have the same setting here, and it is it region. Data labels on center. And you see the central west, northwest, northeast. And these colors are a little hard to see because I got the color set so high. Let's set the transparency to. And we can turn off the customer label right now. And we can see there's my region names. And if we look at the properties on there, there's my colors and sales there. And I can actually have the values show up as well. So if we come back down here to where we have the columns that we want to see, I can add that. And now you'll see the region label with the amount. And I don't have to have the tooltip showing. and you can turn tooltip off. Okay. So it's the map interface is coming along really nice. Lots of new features. The ability to actually, I think Philippe showed it last time, actual geometry. If you have geometry columns in your data, you can actually use that as a data element. It becomes first class into the visualizations. There's one added feature that just came in, and I don't have negative numbers, but there is a setting, and just watch the video. When you have negative values, you can have it be almost like a conditional format, showing them that it's a different color. So from there, the only other thing, Dan, was the JSON file size is now the max for a single file for a GeoJSON file is was it 100 meg, and total JSON files 200 meg in total. So when you're loading up GeoJSON files,
Yeah, I saw that, Wayne. And I was like, oh, that may help us.
yeah. So here's your limit. And they're not that JSON files usually aren't that big, but you are limited to 100 meg for a single file compressed, and then 200 meg in totality in your space here. One thing to note is that there was a question regarding hooking into Spatial Studio. It doesn't directly hook to Spatial Studio, but what you can do is write to the same schema from that your database is on for the data, right? So, and we look at here, this, when I did this, and if you watch the setup, I created custom regions in Spatial Studio, and I wrote that back to a table in my data warehouse schema that is being used here for creating my visualizations. So you can do things like that and have it work both ways, so that analytics will read the same tables that Spatial Studio is writing to. But there's not a kind of, I think the question was on vectors, but I can share the same schema between Studio and OAC.
Okay.
So, and if you really want to see stuff on maps, Tim and I are going to be presenting at Kscope a combination of our two minds coming together with some really neat new features on map layers and integrating maps into OAC. So
That sounds
that's
cool.
all I have.
Okay, well, super. People have been taking advantage of the Q&A, which is great, to ask some detailed question. We'll leave that open for a little bit for people. But I will also just quickly mention that we do have information out with some of those helpful links. And we just share the screen. So we do have some of those helpful links in the chat, and I will also mention that on our website at AnDOUC.org, we have more information. We have the TechCasts and AnDOUC.org, and come present with us. That's what we have prepared for today. I'll also mention we did record this session, and Wayne, I believe you put those up on the YouTube channel. Thanks for your uploading and editing capabilities. So if there are colleagues that missed this, please have them come to the AnDOUC.org site. You can find the replays on the replay links once we get those done, but generally the videos go up even faster for that. So take a look at the YouTube channel for AnDOUC.org. You go to the website and click on the YouTube link, and you can get all of the TechCasts that we've been giving for the last 5 years. With that, I'll thank our panelists. Any final thoughts from Wayne and Tim?
No, I encourage everybody to try this stuff out and, know that you can reach out to us, on the Slack channel. And so we're interested in, hearing what you guys are doing and everything. So good luck.
There are email addresses, and you can also reach to us on LinkedIn, and as Tim mentioned, on the Slack workspace for Analytics and Data Oracle user community. With that, thank you, everybody. Look forward to talking to you in another two months or so on the new May features once we have a chance to play with them.
Thanks,
See ya.
Eric.